Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. And you're very, very welcome to this afternoon's masterclass, which is the first in the series of July masterclasses with the National Concert Hall. So while we're sorry we can't welcome you to the Concert Hall itself, we're delighted to bring you virtually, as it were, the National Concert Hall into your own homes for what promises to be a very interesting, informative, and entertaining masterclass. And we are delighted to welcome the wonderful cellist Ailbhe McDonagh to present this masterclass with three wonderful students this afternoon. Ailbhe performs throughout Ireland and internationally as a soloist and a chamber musician. She's a graduate of the Eastman School of Music in New York and the Royal Irish Academy of Music, where she now teaches cello performance at both third and second level, in addition to coaching chamber music. Ailbhe performs throughout Europe and North America, and she has appeared as a concert soloist numerous times in Ireland and abroad, such venues as Carnegie Hall, the Yale Norfolk Festival, Schleswig-Holstein Music Festival, Great Irish Houses Festival, among many others. Ailbhe also performs as a chamber musician in a duo with the McDonagh sisters, with pianist Orla McDonagh, and she's also a member of the Ficino Ensemble, the Bellissima Trio, and the crossover traditional Irish music group Trio Elatha. Ailbhe is also an established composer and has numerous compositions and commissions to her name. Ailbhe joined the cello faculty of the Royal Irish Academy of Music in 2010, and her debut solo CD, It's a Cello Thing, was named CD of the Week on Ireland's national classical music station, RTE Lyric FM, and indeed is played internationally. Ailbhe will record all of the Beethoven cello and piano sonatas with pianist Dr. John O'Connor this August 2020, and she performs on a Postacini cello. So Ailbhe, you're very, very welcome, and we're delighted to have you, and thank you very much for doing this masterclass with us this afternoon. We have three wonderful students, the first of whom is Rosheen Fleming. And Rosheen is a 17-year-old cellist from Cork and studying with Christopher Marwood in the CIT Cork School of Music. She's a member of Cork Youth Orchestra and the National Youth Orchestra of Ireland, and she's also a member of the Key Quartet and CIT School of Music. Rosheen has won prizes in Feis Matthew and Feis Ceoil, and also studies piano with Conor Palliser. Rosheen is going to play the first movement of Haydn's Cello Concerto in C major. We hope you enjoy the session. Rosheen, we hope that you enjoy it. And Ailbhe, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you, Nigel. Rosheen, it's lovely to have you here today. I'm very excited to hear you play. Thanks for coming in from the comfort of your own home.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted. And this is a very unique experience, as normally I would be right beside you, but we will work with what we have today. And if you want to take it away, I will, anytime, I'll just raise my hand if we need to say.
Thanks.
Super. How are you doing, Rosheen? Can you hear me there? I'm not sure. Excellent.
Sorry, yeah.
That's great. I'm going to just stop you there for a minute, and then what we'll do is we'll continue on there. You have a beautiful musical way of playing the cello. It's really lovely to hear your musicality, which just flows out of you. I think anyone listening can be very aware of that. So very well done. I can really tell what you want to do in the music, which is, our main job. So just starting at the very beginning, I'm wondering, you have a sense of character there, but what is it that you think of at the very start with that first C major chord?
Well, the very first chord, I think, it's stately. It's very, it's not shy at all. And then immediately it just turns into this playful kind of.
Absolutely. I think you're dead right that kind of stately feel to it, it sets us up for the whole concerto. And then suddenly we have this lyrical, which is a totally different character straight away. So I think to help with the character that you want, I think just thinking very specifically about the rhythmic impulses of the little notes that you have from the very beginning would be really helpful. To what you have there already is great. But so you're actually thinking about the subdivisions in all of these. I felt now, because you're at home and you just started a masterclass, that we had a little bit of a triplet-y feel. Kind of a little bit like that. Instead of even for me there. So just a little bit sharper. And always thinking about the subdivision whenever you have the dotted quaver. So the last two notes are really sparkling. Do you want to try that again from the beginning? Okay. Lovely. So that was much improved. I felt it much more rhythmic in those ya da dum da dum da. But just watch the first. So it's thinking about who's in charge. Is it the left hand or is it the bow hand? When we get to here, it's the bow, but here it's the left hand. So being very clear cut in your head that it starts off chord, left hand, bow. So there's so much to think about in just that one bar. Okay, so really think rhythmically in your left hand, and still later, just there to be really, really rhythmic with the third and the fourth fingers. Okay, when you get to the chords after this, maybe the next one could be a little bit more and leading into the C major again. Just thinking that we're not going to have the two exactly the same. They sound beautiful, but it's a different harmony, so maybe you could show us that a little bit more. Yeah? Okay, from the beginning once more. Okay, now that was stunning. It was absolutely beautiful. It sparkled. It, that just from the very start, you set off that character that I could feel is in you, but just hadn't been brought to the surface as much as you can bring it. So always exaggerate, I think, what is already inside you to make sure that you're really pushing it to where you want to go. Okay, so that was all beautiful. When you get to a note like this, you still want the phrase to continue because it's one big long phrase. So on that F, don't let yourself relax. It's not over yet. Really let yourself be always magnetically tied in tension, if that makes any sense at all. To the next one. So I'm going to let you keep going now for this next thing. That area. So when you get there, change your character from the very first beginning of that note. Okay, but let's just hear the second one of these from there. Okay, super. I really liked your, the tension went superbly through that. And I also liked your character change that started on, suddenly this was a different color. Beautiful. So I can tell you've thought about the phrasings quite a lot, which is fantastic. What I want you to do is make sure that you're never giving an accent somewhere where you don't mean to within the phrase. So, for example, I'm going to exaggerate. This is not how you played it, but to give you an idea. When really, you know, the phrase is going on. You know, it has to continue, and if you put a little emphasis somewhere that you are only doing for a technical reason, then it slightly interrupts the phrase.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. Sorry, I should have, just because we're on Zoom, I'll talk a little bit. So this is all beautiful character-wise. I think where it slightly changes is maybe it's slightly happier and more buoyant there, right? So I think you have to actually say to yourself inside, you have to physically be like an actor who thinks about that feeling as you go, so that your audience, which today is all online, so you're doing very well without one at home, but to actually feel that inside when you're young, there's a difference in color when you think about it inside than when you just go happy. You see the difference in the vibrancy and the sound of the overtones. So think about that specifically, and then maybe, you know, is something coming here? Is this developing into something slightly different in character? Can you maybe just let us know that that's coming by the color in your sound? Yeah? Okay, so let's start straight on here. Okay, that was beautiful. So you see, you can still have vibrancy, but not give it an extra accent. Yeah. So be careful when you have the quavers come, or the semi-quavers after your tie, that you don't try and make up the time. Sometimes I would hear just that there's a little bit of forward motion. It's because you're very musical. So when you're very musical, you want to push forward into the phrase, but don't let those notes be upset. You have to sing those too. Yeah. So let's just try straight on there and just love those notes. Okay, beautiful. So I really liked when you think about those little notes and you're giving care and attention to each one of them, it really fills out the body of the sound when you're actually playing the line. So that's great. I would be very careful about any long note that you have and see, do you want it to die away or keep the tension going or move towards something in energy? So something like what do you do with that note? It's not just a finisher, it's still tied somehow to the next note. So what do you think?
I mean, I always kind of thought of it as like it dies down, but it's still there, and then it kind of gives it sort of flows next note sort of.
Absolutely. So that's exactly it. How do we achieve that on the cello? You know, if it was a piano, it would just die away, and there's not much you can do with that sound. You can have the intention, but it will just naturally fade. But we have tools. So no vibrato. Even just the bow has the ability to keep the tension. So that kind of really thinking about just your first finger and what kind of, and then add a touch of vibrato. I went too much away from the first finger there, so mine got a little bit flaky. But you can actually think about maybe using really, really small vibrato just at the end. So there is a little bit of color happening, but with the bow it slightly fades out. Yeah?
Okay.
Will we try that just from that bar or the beginning of that page? Okay, lovely. So that's something to play around with. Do you want to use slower vibrato, faster vibrato? I'm not sure you were convinced with the sound at that point. So you can just maybe take away the vibrato, try it just with the bow, then just try a certain vibrato technique, speeding up, slowing down. So you can experiment with what sound you want and how it will lead on. Okay, so this is all great. That shift is always a touch awkward, isn't it? Just to make sure that you're really centered with the balance of the finger over that A when you get up there. Sometimes I feel like your almost weight is a little bit back, which is why it might sound a little flat. Okay.
Okay.
So your phrasing here was beautiful. I love this. So here, still think of this as part of the musical line. I know you're concentrating on it being, I have to make sure that I'm together and I have my rhythmic right hand and left hand together, which everybody does. But yours sounds fabulous. So you have to let it go and think, just making sure it's within the phrase and the actual character that you want it to be, and not suddenly, now I'm playing the scale.
Yeah.
You certainly didn't sound like that, but it's to really imagine that every single thing is part of this character that you're trying to portray to an audience. Okay, brilliant. Let's try straight from. Super. Okay, so already a lot of that has just naturally gone in. I loved here you transferred this. The love in those little notes. So that was great. I felt your ha-ha character. And this. And for this, just making sure that you practice it in rhythms, or, you know, for that, it's actually left hand and bow that have to be really rhythmic together. So it's a matter of practicing it with a little impulse in your head. So you could even do and giving yourself just a little accent for practice, and then you have somewhere where to land. You know the ways that you can practice that for pure coordination. So the next section, beautiful. I think as you move up each one a little more, and then here you have to let the sound just blossom. It suddenly has to be like someone has opened, you know, the best box of chocolates in the world, or heaven. You know, whatever you think your thing is that makes you the happiest in the world. I don't know why I said chocolate in heaven, because, you know. So I think you need to watch your longer notes and make sure that you save the bow at the start. So you don't necessarily have to do a long, fast bow to get that sound. A little bit of just sinking in a touch. So what you're doing is you're pronating a little bit more at the start and saving on each of those. Here. Just so the sound is still the same consistency as you go through. Let's just start just on that and think of your box opening fabulousness moment. You just love that and the sound that you create. Okay, it sounds beautiful. It sounds a tiny bit muted to me over Zoom, but you might be able to tell me if it's as full as it should be. Is there any way that you're not close enough to the bridge? Could you move a bit closer so that you don't have to work as hard?
Okay.
Okay. And yes, so your sound is already improving. I don't know if you can see my bow there, but I'm quite close to the bridge because we're so high up. And also, I really want you to kind of sink in with your arm weight. So you don't use too much bow too soon. We need a little bit of intensity, I think, in that. So a little bit more peanut butter. Janos Stracker used to say that all the time. So it's like bowing, that you have to actually, bow through some peanut butter. So it's just slightly gritty, depending on your choice of peanut butter. But the idea being that you can feel that tension. It's not flighty. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just a nice thing to think about the consistency that you want at the start of the bow. Okay, try again. Okay, lovely. I totally put you off there at the very end with my hand raising. It's a very funny way to give lessons, isn't it? But you sound super. Did you notice the difference in the sound that you created on that top note now?
Yeah, it was a lot kind of, it was a lot closer to kind of what I had in my head. It was a lot truer to kind of my idea of the piece. So
brilliant. Well, what you need to think about is when you're up in a high passage, you're well able technically to play anywhere up here. So it's about creating the same type of sound you would have down in a lower position. And all the tools you need for that really are playing close to the bridge in a way that almost makes you uncomfortable. I practice a lot on the boundary of where it starts to crack. So I push it well past what is a nice sound, And then I kind of come back a little bit just to see where it can actually, on my instrument, rest well, that it will just be a beautiful sound that sounds relaxed and still has full volume. So I think you could investigate that, especially in a piece like this where you just want it to be totally free up there.
Yeah.
So, and maybe just thinking about your bow distribution. So what is the, here, you could do a sneaky to get yourself much closer back to the heel, so you don't end up trying to have that note somewhere further up. Sometimes your distribution choices can help. So you can play around with starting at different points or later points, that kind of idea. Okay, this was lovely. This next section. I always think this slightly more percussive. And I love the way that you hold da-da, da-da, da-da. It's the same premise as the beginning, that I want you to feel like you're a drummer all of a sudden. Yeah, da-da, or a timpani player, you know, at the beginning of a big symphony, where you are the person who gives the rhythm. And because we're doing something awkward, sometimes it's not 100%. So I think just get that feel and ignore, you know, your positioning or anything like that. I'm not worried about that. It's just when you get there to be free enough to go, I am going to be percussive. And even if my notes are all wrong, that doesn't matter. I'm going to be percussive and it will still sound fabulous. I've heard people in performance of this playing very wild variations of what's written, but it still sounded great because they gave it so much heart when they got there. So could you just go from just here from that spot and just think percussion. Okay, I think you might have to actually move down. Do you have the version where it's 2 notes on top? And then you have to move your bow down to the solo G. Is that the one you have?
Yeah, but that's not what I'm playing.
Is that a choice or?
Yeah.
It is a choice. So what's your choice? You're gonna hold the top, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So can you try it again and show me that? Okay. Lovely. So that does make perfect sense, because it brings out the tune beautifully. So I would just watch the rhythm, and again, just be very aware that it's your left hand here that's going to go yadam 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 yada da 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 da. You know, so that you're really thinking of your subdivisions, so it never becomes anything outside of that. Okay, lovely. Let's go from maybe here, just after your words. Okay, great. So in these long lines, this would be another place to try and take out any other accents that might be there. So that you have I kind of heard just a little bit. So just being really careful that your bow speed doesn't change anywhere, you know, too faster or slower within a phrase where you don't want it to. Okay, so just the same spot again, and just finish off and then wherever the end of that is. Lovely. Okay, so that was beautiful. All of a sudden, it instantly went out into longer lines for me. So if I were you, when you're practicing pieces like this, I would just record yourself a little bit, taking out one phrase like that. And you can actually, again, try it without any vibrato and just see what the bow is doing. Just focus on, am I putting in any extra inflections there, any extra speeds that I might not have noticed? Just to make it as pure sounding as you want. It naturally emerges from you. So, okay, fantastic. Shall we continue on?
Yeah.
Perfect. Do you want to, let's go from, do you have bar numbers, bar 59 maybe?
I don't have bar numbers, I'm afraid.
Next section is good. Yeah, perfect. That's okay. This is a great place to stop. I love it. So fantastic. This is really good, and I like the way that you automatically just put some of the things into this that we've been talking about in the first section. So well done. That's hard to do on the spot. Okay, lovely. So the first thing I definitely keep an eye on, just that rhythmic thing. It's the first thing that sets up all the time, and everybody has a tendency to do that in a slightly earlier place. So just take that out. Yeah, lovely. So when we get to this, do you want to change the character here? Or do you want to go and change it on the new section? What was your plan?
I think it was more kind of a gradual thing, so that it would be changed by the G, and then
absolutely. And what is this the same character that you had in the first section here?
I think it's a little bit more timid, but it's the same idea.
Lovely. Well, I would like you to make it more obvious, as in draw us in those 6 notes. So it's kind of quite hard to do. So really thinking about the different ways you can adapt and change your color. Okay. So let's just go from okay. That is lovely what you're doing with the color, but I would probably advise against taking a little bit of time before this. You know, it makes it easy, but I think you can do it with no time, just straight and so it emerges rather than holding up a sign. Okay. Beautiful. So that's the idea, is just making sure that you know what you're trying to do when you get there and how you're going to get there. So actually practicing in, rather than just knowing you're going to do it, you have to physically think about how you're going to achieve it in the bow. So obviously we're doing a dim, but we're also changing color. So thinking about all those additives that will help that happen in the time. Okay, lovely. Let's go straight into this. So great bit. I mean, talk about another timpani player going wild. This is like, did you ever see the Muppets?
Yes.
So, you know Animal from the Muppets?
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters. I always think this bit is like the classical music version of Animal from the Muppets. Even though it's slightly more tasteful than that. So this note, quite often people tend to really hit that. And if you don't give it a huge accent, it actually helps continue the line on to the next. You know, so something like, I didn't do that very well. So I'm actually thinking about the animal moment, and then suddenly we're back into classical land, and then the animal moment again. So it's not necessarily all going to be as strong and forceful. For me, it's actually two different characters. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of like I had this sort of vision in my head of like this being this animal bit being kind of some kind of wild storm in the sea, and then these maybe they're like cries for help from a faraway boat or something. I don't know.
Oh, I like it. No, absolutely, and it's brilliant that you have your characterization so clear. Your version is much more poetic than mine. I like it. I might see. So the one thing I just watch out for is when you hear, just watch out for the quality of sound on that E, and then on the next F, so that you don't necessarily ever, I think it might be in the context of the last bit, and you're still in that, but you need to actually change your character one note earlier.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's just try it straight on the money there. Okay, so it's an unusual way of thinking about it, because we have always been taught that it's all the same. But it's interesting for you to think about, especially in the earlier pieces, that you're going to have very black and white moments where you're going to change character. And I think because you're so good at character and you've already thought about this quite intensely, it would be really good to see, can you get into character from the first note that you mean it? This is something that everyone struggles with, is getting their head in line exactly when it needs to be. I think we've actually come to the very end. I can't believe it already. But you sound absolutely fabulous. You've got such beauty and character in your playing. I think just the things that we talked about today, keeping an eye very carefully on small rhythmic notes, that would be the first thing. The second thing maybe would be, if you can always in your lyrical lines go through with like a detective to see, are you putting an accent or an impetus anywhere that you might not have noticed, especially when you're musical, in your head something is coming out, but something slightly different might be coming out the odd time on the instrument. And that last thing is just your characters, that they're very good what you've chosen, but I think you need to be bold and go with them. You know, don't be afraid to make a dirty sound, you know, that I think you can go large with your characters. And it's been an absolute pleasure. So best of luck in your future, and I hope we meet again soon.
Thank you so much.
Very
Bye.
well done. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Rosheen. Well done. Thoroughly enjoyed that, and thank you, Ailbhe. It's always fascinating, though it's far from the cello I was raised. It's always fascinating to hear the insights of teachers and working with their students. So thank you for that. We will move straight on, though I will say that we will be taking a very short break after we hear from Peadar of about 3 to 5 minutes. So if you're listening in, if you're watching, please don't go anywhere, or do go, but come back to listen to our third participant. And also, I'd like to just highlight that we are taking questions on YouTube. So if you want to write your questions into the YouTube comments, we will have a Q&A session at about 4:30, and Ailbhe will be very happy to reply to any questions at that point. So we will move on with Peadar Ó Loinsigh, and Peadar is a bachelor student at the Royal Irish Academy of Music, and he's just completed his second year under the tutelage of Christopher Marwood. He's also the principal cellist of Sinfonua, which is the National Concert Hall's development orchestra, and he is involved in the mentorship program with the RTE NSO for 2020. So Peadar and Ailbhe, I will leave you to it and enjoy the session.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Nigel.
Hi, Peadar.
Hi, Ailbhe, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm delighted to have you here today.
Thank you.
It wasn't very long ago that we were on the concert hall stage together, playing our first gig back, I think.
Yeah, it's great fun.
Absolutely. It was a great project. So lovely to have you. You're going to play us some Dvořák today.
Yeah.
I might get you to play on through the second section. Yeah, da 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 bom bom. If we'll just keep playing a little bit so that you can get a good run at it. Okay, take it away. Super. Very well played. Lots of great things in there. You've got a fantastic sense of bravado, which this is all about. So I really feel the character coming straight away from the beginning. So many good things in there. If we start at the very, very, very opening, this is kind of an interesting section because, you know, with the orchestra, you've just sat there for 2.5 minutes. And it's actually quite nice. The orchestra is playing around you, and then suddenly they go into this kind of murmur, which is very unusual that you're suddenly going, you know, you suddenly come in with this alternate universe. So what is your character here? I know it says resolute.
Kind of heroic, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
But yeah.
So that's exactly it, and it's the idea to keep it going through all of these notes, which is the challenge.
Yeah.
I wondered in your little notes, did you need to have a little more pronation going on up at the tip of the bow? So you have to physically just lift your elbow a little bit more so that you have the sound that you need up there.
Okay.
Because otherwise, that sound can sometimes be a little bit puny, not in your playing, in everybody's, comparatively to this. You know, this suddenly is like, oh, and then, you know, it has to be the same. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, in order not to lose the tension on the first finger, you have to continue the vibrato, or even change it towards the next notes. So I'm actually speeding up at the end in order to draw me to the next note.
Okay.
So no note ever will exist on the same plane because it's either going somewhere or coming from. You know that. So, you know, how do you get this global beginning? I think you need to think about tension through your long notes a tiny bit more. Okay? So just start at the beginning and think about that pronation on the little notes. Okay. That's, your sound was fabulous at the start. Could you just once give me an accent and an accent on? So disgusting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think your down bow at the top doesn't have the same accent as your up bow does.
Okay.
So in order for it to be, I'm being very specific here, just because the opening is so cool, you know? And this is the moment where everyone's like, ah, brilliant, let's go for it. So really just as much energy and weight and everything that you can get into those two notes as well as the rest. Okay, take it away. Okay, so that's, I'm just gonna stay here for a minute because it's such a beautiful moment. That was the perfect sound, just your rhythm sounded like ya da da, so ba ya da da, like make sure that you're subdividing from the start.
Okay.
And that it's really, really just no change. Okay. Yeah, keep going, keep going. Good. So I would still do more like just before you start that.
Yeah.
This last note here. If you want a gap, I think that's fine. But what I would do is make sure that your gap isn't huge. So leave it to the very last second. I mean, some people just do. Sometimes it can be more dramatic for the opening if there aren't any gaps. And it just all feels like this big giant phrase leading us somewhere. Okay, let's start from the top. Okay, good. So the same with the two B's. but I just think it's much more powerful if the sound is kind of surround sound. And when you get to the low, so I want you to phrase the chords. So it goes bom, 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 bom. And I think you can't take time before this and this. So I think the syncopation of that is the cool thing, you know?
Okay.
That's the moment that is so surprising. And if you take too much time there, it will end up being a little bit, the effect of the syncopation is taken away, I suppose.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we'll just start the line one more time, and then I promise I'll stop harassing you about it.
Don't worry about it.
Thanks. Okay, so already that sounds so powerful. You can choose yourself later if you like the gap or not. I would just suggest if you do the gap, do way less of a gap. At the moment, it almost sounds like you're playing a crotchet.
All right. Okay.
I mean, probably not. Maybe a dotted crotchet. But yeah, it's sometimes I find when I take a gap, my gaps become like the Grand Canyon, and I haven't noticed because I'm used to it, you know. So just pay attention to that. So up here, first line fab, then you went, and I think you were surprised at how early it's supposed to come in. Actually, it was interesting. So watch the same thing up here. Sometimes I hear just a tiny bit, not super straight. Here especially. I mean, I'm exaggerating now, but just be very careful with the same bowling, same space, same weight, so that it's exactly the same rhythm. Yeah. Just go from that one. Yeah, that was much, much better. So I think it's funny because this piece you can take time, but not at the start. I think at the start it's too early to be kind of messing with the rhythm.
Okay.
So let's keep going from here. This is all very good. When you get to this, same again there. Just the same kind of equal rhythm. I didn't do that myself, but you know, you can try that there. So let's just go straight on and keep going this time. Okay, so that all sounds great. When you go down, you have to make sure that you have really a lot of sound, because in that register in the orchestra, they'll cover you.
Okay.
That kind of idea. So the more you go down, you have to always think about that odd area in the cello where it just doesn't project as much. It's just that one octave. So think about that. And if I were you, I would just play around with you know, could you do less of a writ?
Yeah.
I mean, I think again that might be another place where I certainly expand a lot, and then I always, coming back to play this piece, have to bring myself back in. You know, that sometimes it just suddenly goes. You know,
It's too much.
Well, for me, it's just not graduated enough to what you came. Even if you wanted to do that, you could go da 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 da. You know, that's graduating it a bit more than what you did, which just seemed to stop and get out of a slower tempo. Okay, right. So maybe just from there.
Sorry.
And you can still, when you play around it, it'll still have the same force and attention in it. I know you were just playing with that, but you can practice that in. Let's keep going from here. Okay, so this is something I noticed, that sometimes when you're at the peak of a crescendo, you take a little moment beforehand on the previous note. So I heard, and really we want the attack to be on the right. So I think it has to go into that note, not
Okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
So just watch that. The same thing also happened here. Instead of, that's where we really want the emphasis. So just be careful about. It's because you're being musical, so it's not a bad thing. It's just I notice myself that I pick out notes that I like and I hang around on them when I'm not invited to. So sometimes we have to kind of cull back what is a naturally musical thing. Okay. Just from there. Okay. Good. I felt you were a tiny bit stuck there because I just said that. So just let yourself be free. If you need a split second, okay, but don't let it go. And when you get to here, it would be really good if I could tell the difference between, and I can. I just would like to hear the difference a bit more between and I think in your phrase, again, it's a musicality thing. You kind of wanted to draw it, so it kind of went. I'm exaggerating, but it just wasn't even enough for me to go, oh, I'm appreciating the difference.
Yeah.
Why these two are different. Okay. Right, same spot again. Okay, yeah, that was miles better already. Be careful with your connections. That there was a gap, like just, I think the thing is that sometimes you don't necessarily, because you're thinking ahead, you kind of don't think about the pure connection, that all of these little gaps, you could just line up a little bit more, thinking about your bow speed or what connection you're having in your left hand. That's a tiny thing, so we'll move on. But when you get here, you could really go way less. And if you're worried about projecting within an orchestra behind you, you can actually do this. So closer to the bridge, but still tiny. So it's harder to manage the bow up there. But that will have core to the sound that will project down a hole. If you just keep your bow in that area. But you definitely need much more of a 2-bar stay down, so that your overall arrival at 4 becomes much more dramatic.
Yeah. Because
you've been much lower for much longer. And then you can imagine it's like suddenly when a band turns on the lights, suddenly everyone's gotten wild. And that's essentially the feeling we want to get here. Okay, let's go straight on the trill. Okay, lovely. So that was really good. I could feel you wanting to creep up before I said it. Yeah, but that's just something we've practiced in. So, but it's so much more effective. I'd be careful about your sforzando dim. Don't let yourself go to piano straight away. Just do use the 4 beats to actually dim, and then stay down to nothing. So this is all really good. And then I heard. So I'm sorry to harp on about this, but it's gapitis.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's just when someone says to me recently, I've had a terrible problem with putting too many slides in everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's because
No,
I
I
love slides.
appreciate you pointing it out because I hadn't noticed it. So that's like really, really useful.
Yeah. So the beauty of this is sometimes it's everybody develops a habit of some kind at every point in their musical career. And if you don't notice it, you won't actually change it. Whereas I think I went through these Beethoven sonatas I'm recording in August. I think I found 100 slides that I didn't want out of, you know, that I had just naturally put in because I like the sound of them, but actually I don't want them in Beethoven. So it's just something to be aware of, like myself, that anytime something comes in, once you notice it now, you'll see it everywhere and you'll fix it. So it's just a subconscious thing. So you have to actually practice the inputs. So it's hard because you're still trilling and you have to do a semitone shift. But
yeah,
it's only coordination that you need to practice. So just straight on that one maybe. Yes. Good. So now, that was great. So just pay attention to those little things.
Yeah.
When you get to 4, what's your character?
More sort of nervous and energetic, I'd say, a little bit.
Yeah, like it's a funny one for me because this kind of feels a little bit like funky to me.
Yeah.
You know, like in a way that everything has been so heroic. I think you're dead right. There's something a bit edgy about it, but I think a lot of times people play this with too much like how would you describe it? Some kind of strong character, and I must play it like that. You know, that kind of idea. Whereas actually, I think it's okay to be doing and have a little more funky, jokey character attached at this point in the music. Okay, so I know this is a hard one to throw in you right now, but just like yum, yum, so like you're about to click your fingers with excitement. Just see how that goes right now. Okay, how does that feel?
It's challenging, but actually I quite like it. But it needs work. Yeah.
Well, everything does when a new idea is proposed, right? But the great thing about it, I thought, with you was suddenly your sound just released and had a clarity in it that I don't think it did the first time.
Okay.
Because I think you were trying to be very much in the string and together, you know, as we all do at that point. It's a tricky spot. But all of a sudden, when you were allowed to be jovial, suddenly that seemed to work for you. So, I mean, I would definitely suggest that kind of feeling there. When you get to this, it's funny because that kind of sounds like surround sound to me. You know, I will coordinate this when I'm playing it myself. But be careful after you come out of that the next bar still has movement. So sometimes it might end up being the first note. That there's a little bit of a, so it should really go. You don't have time to be musical there because there's so much else going on. And be musical in time. Yeah. Okay, just straight on here. sounds super, absolutely superb. It just suddenly had this flow that was just, it all sounded easy. It was flowing out. It had glorious hills and troughs and the whole shebang. So the one thing I want you to do is think more about your pianos. Because when you get here, like that moment, that's just after you just got to, that moment has to be suddenly out of nowhere 40. You put in one bar to get there. And I just think you're not coming back after, like, on that particular bar and the previous similar one. You're very good at going up, but not necessarily coming back as much.
Okay.
And that will be problematic when you're trying to have the stark contrast later.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Let's try the same spot again. Okay, so that bar, just try slowly for me. Doing your crescendo, like very edged on one note at a time. Okay, so I think on your last bow you need to bow distribute better in that you don't use half the bow in the first note. You have to use maybe a third, another third, and then half, so that you can crescendo at the end of that bar. Yeah. Okay. So it's the very start, save more on the up bow of that last up bow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay, brilliant. So then the final thing that we want when we're here is, I notice sometimes when you're playing with your bow up high, you start high. I don't know if you can see my bow there, can you? Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on 1 second. It's getting closer. So sometimes you bring your bow straight away back up this direction.
Okay.
And really, when you're in that area, you can't afford to come closer to the fingerboard at all, because you need the sound to be big. You have to almost be at the uncomfortable edge of cracking. You know what I mean by that? So push yourself out of your comfort zone here, and don't mind if you crack. I know it's mad on a masterclass if you don't want to, but I don't mind. I give you full permission to be cracky, just to keep yourself down there for a minute. Okay, take it away, just maybe from the previous bar. Yeah. Okay, so that was miles better than you were the last time. But if you watch this back yourself, you'll see that you're just coming out maybe every crotchet, you come back just only a small bit. And I think a little bit of practice in front of the mirror, making sure that it's almost like you have to feel like you're pushing up.
Okay,
which feels very uncomfortable actually. But it's the way that the sound then won't go like that. It has to stay. That is not what you sound like at all. I exaggerate everything, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Okay, let's go from just here.
Sorry.
Good. So that, if if you could manage to practice the yada da 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 slow. So suddenly your speed of bow has to slow down, as if you're hanging something off your arm immediately. And someone has just come up with a bag of stones. So you have to get your hand to suddenly just go straight in, so that that sound up there is high with the bow. It's got tension in it, and it doesn't sound less full than your previous scale that was going up. It needs to sound crazy.
Okay.
Okay, let's try it just from maybe. Just watch that. La da da da. Keep going, lovely. Okay, lovely. Could you make that a totally different color, and could you have your volume?
The lower one, yeah.
The lower one. So this is PP, più tranquillo, and I think a different speed of vibrato might help. So maybe don't rotate. You know, say you're doing a 90%, 90 degrees. So go down to maybe a 30-degree rotation. Okay, so just tiny and slightly faster. Okay, that was already 100 times better. So now could you feel a little bit sad as well while you're at it? I kind of feel like your heart wasn't in the sound that you want. So think of something like awful. It's much better. So I think you just need to be more black and white with your choices of dynamic, actually. That it's not all the same, and you have to bring out these moments where suddenly, you know, you yourself feel like you're about to burst into tears. You know, it has to feel that much inside you for someone else to also feel that. And that goes into this next phrase. So I was saying in the last masterclass as well that you sometimes in a long phrase, if you interrupt the phrase with a bow accent anywhere along the phrase, then it chops the phrase.
Yeah.
So if you can manage to keep the speed of your bow the same through the quavers, particularly, so that there's nothing that interferes with the overall phrase, I know where you want to go, then that'll help. And even me there, because my speed of the third one wasn't the same. You know, it has to feel like it's all just part of the next one and the same, and it's all growing. Okay. Take that away. Okay, good. So at the end of your open A string, there was a little, just because you actually speeded up the bow, which you need to do for the change, obviously, but you can't do it with as much fervor.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is good. Also think about as one little development rather than three separate notes. So it's coming straight. Okay. Okay. I think you could lighten the E a little bit more for the phrase. so it's starting from a lighter point.
Yeah.
And even try just watch your vibrato speed here. Could you be just a bit smaller just at the start and then open out on the D maybe? Okay, so this is really starting to sound really beautiful. Your separate bow here sometimes juts out because it's a separate bow, right? So that's fine that you're doing that, but maybe don't try and get back to the heel. Just and then you can get back here. You know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You need to think about your. I think again, this would be a great idea to record yourself. Just for a line like that, to really be aware of the fact that you might be doing an extra bow speed somewhere along the way, or that you might have the vibrato all the same, when really you want to let the vibrato speed color the phrase the same way you want the direction. Okay, there's one little thing I want to show you. Just, I can't believe we're already at the end of this, but just for this note here, this note is so beautiful. It's so like, where am I going? You know, it's like, this is like life itself. So I think that one, if you could go to barely no vibrato, so it's like 5 times faster, probably I'd say 4 times faster than what you were doing for the whole phrase. That sometimes gives a little phrase of. That's a Steve Dunn trick, and he does it like in the way that it will make you cry every time. And it's just like, it's an effect that you can pull out twice in a concert. But my God, does it produce an effect? So I think for you, it would be great to think about all the colors that you use, and how you can, because all of the things that you're doing are great. You just now need to, rather than having kind of 10, 15 colors, you need to have the 100.
Okay.
And I think you can experiment with that, with things to do with your vibrato, your bow density and speed, and what all the mixes and colors you can do along with that. I think you're doing really, really well, and it's been a total pleasure teaching you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really there's loads of amazing things in there for me to work with.
Oh well, thank you very much. Well, it's such a pleasure, and best of luck. I've no doubt I'll see you around.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Well done, Peadar. Beautiful playing, and thank you again, Ailbhe, for such interesting insights into the music on one of my favorite pieces anyway. So thank you for that.
Me too.
We are going to take a very short break. I'd just like to remind people that we'll have a Q&A at approximately 4:30. So if you would like to put any questions on the YouTube link, that will be the way to get them to us. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will be back to you very shortly. Thank you. Well, welcome back, everybody, and we will proceed now with our third and final participant in this afternoon's masterclass. And this is Catherine Cotter, and Catherine is also a student of Chris Marwood, but this time at the Royal Irish Academy of Music, where she is part of the Young Scholar Programme and the Eversheds Accelerator Academy. Catherine is a numerous first prize winner at the ESB Festival, and she's the lead cellist of the National Youth Orchestra of Ireland. And she has also played with the National Concert Hall's Development Orchestra Sinfonua. And Catherine is going to play Boccherini Sonata number 6 in A major, second movement. So you're very welcome, Catherine. Enjoy the session, and I will leave you with Ailbhe. And just to remind folks that we'll have a Q&A session after this part of the masterclass at approximately 4:30. Thank you.
Hi, Catherine. How are you doing?
Thanks. How are you, Ailbhe?
Very well, thanks. Lovely to see you again.
You too.
So I'm looking forward to hearing the Boccherini. So it's the second movement you're playing, right?
Yeah, the Allegro.
Excellent. If you want to take it away. got played. That is not an easy piece to play, as I'm sure many people watching would have been able to tell. And you did a great job with it. It's always a pleasure to hear you play.
Thank you.
The very opening, you did have a very strong character. I loved it. What was in your head at the start?
It's quite a joyful, playful piece.
Yeah,
Very lighthearted.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that sounds great. And the brillante kind of factor of it came in. Most of the things that you're doing are very, very clear. And I just wondered today if we could have a look a little bit about when we might need to exaggerate the things that you were doing naturally, but how to kind of bring them to the next level of, sound production, or just with this kind of a piece, we need to have very clear black and white areas where we're going to actually do less, or the kind of echo effects that we're doing, that kind of a thing. So let's just start from the very beginning. And I noticed you did the second phrase of the. So that seems to me like it's a bit more of a, the first one was a statement. The second one seems to be slightly more risky, like something's happening, like I'm playing with someone, but I don't really know what's happening yet because it's too soon to tell, that kind of an idea. So could you start from the very beginning and make sure that what you were doing with the second one is slightly different? I presume you're going to bring it more. Yeah. Second one. Okay. Excellent. And then when you get to the piano, just to think about this very much so within the character of the music that you want. And even though, there's a lot of coordination, but you sound fab doing that. So now you can kind of relax and sit back and enjoy the kind of hilarity aspect to this movement. A lot of this is really quite jovial and, as if you're playing with your friend, and that kind of idea where you're teasing someone the whole time, Okay, take it away from the very beginning. Okay, good. So if I were you, just watch the very first. I sometimes hear just an extra accent because it's the A string. Naturally, it's going to be louder. Yeah. So you need to temper that because there's so much brilliance in the sound that you have. You have to actually maybe just be quite firm with the hand so that you've ultimate control when you go onto that string to be able to lighten it. Okay, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is just, could you actually use a little more weight and not as much speed? Because obviously it's awkward going, it's so far to get back. You can get the same result, in the same area down here while being much more comfortable for the next section as well. I think the quality of sound you'll have will be slightly nicer as well, because it's a slight bit more in the string and saved one. Okay, take it away. Okay, so I think you need to actually just put a little more first finger pressure on those crotchets. That's the thing. And really, even more, this. So you have to really guard that by almost playing nothing on that note. And then, as if you're putting in a little crescendo, which we naturally feel anyway, but you just don't want to hear that more than, yeah. Okay, one more go. Okay, good. So that was already miles better. I think for the start, because it's on the D string, I think you need to actually be a little bit closer to the bridge with slightly flatter hair in order to have slightly more of an A string sound. It would just be easier then to even temper this, which you did beautifully this time, but just less of a D sound that's more, woofy, and then just, I think that'll help. Okay, so let's try that, and then when you get to this, I presume, I'm not sure what edition you have, but on the third line, just before the forte. No, it's this one. So you're at that crescendo, if you really, really push that crescendo much, much more, so that you end up being much louder, almost up to the forte that you're going to have. Okay, take it away.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's hard, isn't it, to commit to that last yada-da-dum. You know, I want to hear overtones there. I always go to the wrong string. You can actually make sure that last open A isn't a disgusting sound just by being just really, really jovial with it and using the overtones as something, you know, this is of an era where open strings are okay. So, you know, you can actually channel the sound that an open string gives in a way that you might not be allowed to use as much in later music, and actually use those overtones. You know, it's really quite a sharp surrounding sound. And I think you just need to let go a little bit more in that bar, so that suddenly goes yum ba, and then we're off. That's the idea. Your beginning was much better, I think, with the flatter bow. Just to think about that difference whenever you are starting a really important theme, and it suddenly goes to the A string afterwards. You know, we have to. So that will always help. Just the slightly flatter and closer to the bridge. Okay. Would you like to start from maybe one more time from the start, and then we'll keep going. Lovely. So I think you can definitely experiment more with having a disgusting sound at. You know, it definitely has to be more hooly, and I definitely think you're being polite for the class. And I know that this is something we've talked about before, is just making sure that it doesn't always have to be pretty. That takes me a long time to get used to that idea myself. But it's okay to have a kind of, what do we say, rambunctious sound? I don't even know if that's the right word to use here, but you know, you are okay. You know, something that's just so fiery. I think you can let go even more. How about just going from that bar itself and make a disgusting sound? Go for it.
Sorry.
Can you actually give me much more speed with the bow? Can you go from just a bit before it?
Do you mind if I go from just a little before that?
Sure. So I think the issue for you is that you're not really sure what your impulse is on it. Yeah-da-da-da. You know, you really need to feel yeah-da-da-da where it stops as well. So that's where you release. It's hard to get this one over. Do you end on an up or a down?
An up.
Okay, perfect. Because that's much more of it. I want you to feel it like it's an up, big, giant upbeat to the next phrase. So just give it a little bit more speed. I think that'll help. Okay, same spot again. Yes. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about what you think is different in that sound, so you can remember that for all of the other ones of these.
It was a lot more confident.
Yeah.
Because I was finding it hard to just kind of temper the open A string. So
Yeah.
it's nearly to let go of that.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's okay to just let it be an A string. And we're often not taught that. I think you have to sometimes embrace it. And did you notice then with that impetus, it was like there was a forward impetus in your stroke, and then that like a magnet drew me into the next phrase. You know, it really, really did. So if you're not feeling that really strong sense of tension over the finish of that note and the rest into the next phrase, then you didn't get the right stroke on the up-bow. Yeah, that's kind of a good metric for that. Super. Let's keep going from here. So this is something I thought the first time around as well, that again, the open A, you have to give it a little bit of just a tiny bit of first finger pressure so that you get a hum sound. And otherwise that, I can tell, it's just, you know, A stringitis, which we all have. So embrace it. This is a safe space where if you make disgusting noises, I'll be very happy. So it's good. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Take it away from there.
Sorry.
Okay, one little thing. So to think about the two different days. One's a quaver. Your first one was perfect, and then the other one is a crotchet. So it kind of has to be a different speed from the quaver speed, doesn't it? So I would almost push a little bit faster on that one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just same spot again, but your first one was beautiful. Okay. So this is just an interesting thing to think about in this piece because there's so many open A strings. So your first one, funny enough, your second one this time was beautiful, I thought, because there's a tiny bit of a release. You have to actually release. That's it. So there has to be a moment where the bow actually, you're kind of going into it like this palm. So what happened the first time was, so it kind of stayed down on this plane the whole time, whereas really you needed to be more like, you know, I don't know which direction you can see me online there, but so palm. There has to be a little release without the sound disappearing entirely. So just experiment with that as we go along, and I'll stop harping on about it now. Okay, from there. Okay, beautiful. So you've just absolute natural musicality. It just shines through when you're playing all the time. Do you have a piano there before the trill?
It's kind of behind the laptop.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, in my edition, I have a piano, but I do have a suspect edition of this. So basically,
an actual piano, and that's a piano.
Sorry. Yes.
A pianissimo on the trill.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So what I would love is, because this was all forte, I don't really see a huge color change when we get here. So maybe something a little bit, I don't know if I played the right notes there, but you get the general gist of what I'm looking for is I want this to be much more of an intimate character than what we just had coming beforehand. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Take it away from there. Okay, lovely. So this is all beautifully played up here. The first thing I wonder about is just your chord. Could we have it a little more circular? Okay. So I kind of feel like you are very much doing a kind of 2-2, but I don't feel like you're doing an actual circle the way through. And I want it to sound much more round and rich. Yeah. So this is the thing to think about, all of these chords and how do you actually play them with the open strings versus here. I think because we're in a different key, I want suddenly this to be more open than it was before. Yeah. Can you just try that chord on its own for me? Okay, so just watch your low finger, I think 50-50 on both fingers to make sure that it's really, really in tune there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think what might be happening is possibly you're actually using too much bow on the bottom too. So you could actually save a little bit and be at a point in the bow that's actually really comfortable for making big, round, rich sounds.
Yeah.
That's great. And now this time, think about the whole chord going up to the E. Yes, okay. So already that sounds much more full. I would just experiment more with how can you use your fingers here to actually turn around the circle, the arc, a little bit more, and use them to actually go deep into the string. So not so much this direction all the time, but you can experiment a bit more with what you can use these fingers for. I can use them to go. I was talking about this peanut butter technique. I'm not sure if you were around earlier or not, but Janusz Starker said that the bow was best used for peanut butter technique, which basically meant that you had to imagine that you were pulling the friction between the string and the bow was always going to be just like you were kind of buttering peanut butter on. I don't know if you like peanut butter. It worked really well in America, where everyone eats peanut butter, but over here, not so many people eat it. But you know that idea of if you think about that kind of consistency,
Yeah.
that's the kind of feel. It's not surfacey. You can't get to it on the surface. So you have to pull it out like that. Let's just try it one more time. Okay, so I think you can experiment with that on your own with all of these chords. Okay, so when you get up to the top, your sound is lovely and it's very relaxed. So all of your left hand is in great space. I think you could actually push your bow up towards the bridge about this much. You still have a lot of room up there, and it's much easier to play up high when your bow is up there. So you just relax your arm and play very lightly up there, and the sound flows out much easier than it would do just where you're playing at the moment. You might just feel it's a bit more interesting. So, do you want to just go from where it goes up from there? Good, but could you push your bow even further? Like, so uncomfortably close to the bridge. Keep it up there as well. Okay, so I'm making you do very evil things while you're playing very hard notes. So don't worry about any of that. It's for the process of, did you notice anything about your sound?
It was definitely stronger. So.
Yeah. And the thing is, I actually quite like your fluty sound that you had. I like when it sounds like it's a flute up there. But I think you can experiment with just seeing up there the different colors of sounds that if you push your bow up, it's because we're up so high, the string is so short. And then basically, if you're only using down to here, it just has a tiny, almost choked sound to it. So it's actually much easier when your bow is much closer to the bridge, and you'll find if you use different variants of weight while you're up there, that sometimes it'll sound really strong and sometimes it'll sound very fluty if you're just quite light up there. But I would definitely take out the higher passages in this piece and experiment with that, because you automatically straight away have a fabulous ability to just change things straight off the bat. So I would do that and make sure always that you're enjoying the sound with a free arm. I think that'll really help. Okay, take it away from that spot and we'll keep going. So I'm going to ask you to see, could you take out any accents you're putting in because of the bowing?
Yeah.
This seems to be the thing for today. That I know you know the phrasing is not dictated by the bowing. But sometimes because of the technical difficulty of this piece, you're putting an accent on the start, da 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 da, and do you want it to be like that, or da 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 dum bum, ya dum bum, da 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 dum bum? I'm exaggerating hugely, but I think by taking out some of those accents, you will get a much longer, freer sounding line. Okay, so let's try one more time and just experiment with it. How did that sound to you?
I think I was still putting in a few accents that I didn't want there, but it was better, I think.
Yeah, no, it definitely was better, and it's just interesting to take out those legato phrases where and just actually investigate. Take out everything else, strip it right back to just the bow and no left hand vibrato or anything like that. And just see, are you putting in accents? Be aware of that, and then put in any that you want. But I think overall the shape of that line is just so much longer when you don't have them in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely. Was there something else I was going to say about that? Nope, I think that was it. Okay, so the next section. Just before you start it, the next phrase is kind of weird, isn't it? It's kind of funny after this strong thing to have quite a slow phrase coming in afterwards in piano. So how do you actually commit to that? I think you have to suddenly just surrender it in character, and I think it needs to suddenly be, Pride and Prejudice, that kind of old school. You have to actually just commit 100%, because otherwise that sounds a bit uncertain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so take it from the forte. Okay, that was already beautiful. Your character was so much better. Maybe I can't sing that high. Just watch that you don't put an accent on the first beat of the next bar. So you don't necessarily have to put the downbeat accent in just because it is downbeat. I know you know that, but just that's another example of where you can have a look at that type of thing. So the next bit was beautiful. And then I have a PP written in where it suddenly changes to that area. So I don't know if you have in your score as well, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so for me, I think you need to instantly on that F sharp suddenly drop a level. And for me, it's kind of like almost, but you need to just black and white. It's a totally different thing. It's like you need to step into a different room full of different things, and whatever character you think it is, it's like you've opened the door into that right now. So can you just go from the previous, the MP F sharp?
Yeah.
Okay, so this time I think you gave us a little bit of notice on the previous E, right? So it's tricky because you have to do, you have to commit to the end of the old one and be really, really specific. Okay, same again, just to see, because your color was beautiful, it was just too soon. Okay, lovely. This sounds great. I love this bit. I mean, it's just so funky, isn't it? It's kind of cool. So, I think when you experiment a bit more with playing up towards the bridge in the kind of piano forte areas, I think then what you did with your PP was stunning. So I think then when you go back a little bit to the fingerboard and play your PP color, then it'll be startling, actually, the difference when you've experimented a little more with staying up closer to the bridge a bit more.
Yeah.
Super. So in this, are you sure of your bow circles? Have you looked at your bow circles in there?
Not really.
Okay, so I don't know if you remember me talking about this before, but so that's basically a clockwise circle.
Yeah.
So it's the same circle the whole time, and you know when that's happening. So therefore, it's not easy at all. For now, you sound beautifully coordinated. I just want to make sure that, because the odd time, just for coordination, it wasn't 100% there. Can you just start straight on that for me, just thinking about that?
Oh, sorry.
Do you want to just do a slow one first? Are you doing down, up, down, or are you doing, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing down, up, down.
Okay, good. And then if you want it to be really, really tight in sound, so it depends if you like that sound that you have at the moment, which does sound great to me, but I wonder if you want a tiny bit more core to the sound, then maybe just keep a slightly firmer fingers in the right hand, just to make sure you have ultimate control over the rhythm the whole time, and it doesn't get slow from the previous section. Yeah. Okay, good. So you hear the difference in the quality of the sound, and
Yeah.
it's just a tiny matter of being slightly firmer, and it's a kind of unusual thing where you would assume for this a much more floaty hand would be better, but not necessarily in tiny notes that are very rhythmic. Okay, that's great. Just about the tuning there, just make sure that you actually do double stop practice between them to really make sure that your hand balance is exactly where it should be on that. Otherwise, it sounded great. Okay, will we keep going from there, from the... Okay, good. So can you, in that, I want you to think about the idea of it's a higher note and we do want it to sing out, but what can you do to make that, whoops, wrong notes, where am I going from? So, okay, so the idea is that even though we do want it to come out, it somehow has to make this phrase longer, and if you put an accent on it, like a dead accent like that, then it will suddenly start a new accent, a new phrase for us. Okay, so you're trying to make sure that it leads with movement. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's try it from the same phrase again. Yeah, so it's just about thinking about those things for you. Do you want, or do you want something that's just a slightly little bit longer overall? So it's just something that you can play around with. Maybe one more time, just from the second one that has the... Okay, and I also think you need to think about when you have the separate notes, are you doing on the first two semiquavers there? Are you doing staccatos like the next?
I was kind of trying to, but I was in the wrong part of the bow too. I had to.
Well, exactly. So you could actually solve that in two ways. Just literally get back more. But also, I think when it goes, you can be loose. Then you have to be firmer with the fingers. You know, to get, and you can release your level of firmness. I was going to say firmity, but that's not a word. And the idea being that you can make it a little more brushy if you want, adding a little bit of looseness. But if you want, you just need a bit more clarity than what you have going on at the moment. Okay, try again. It sounds great. Otherwise, I like just your phrase up to it. Yeah, do you see the way there's just a bit, there are a few more consonants in your sound when you do that. So it's about turning on that side of your brain to go, now I need to actually just have a little moment and then I release again. So it's all about that tension and release business that we've got going on. Super. Have you ever seen the show Blackadder?
No.
So it's an old show, but fully enough, it actually has this theme. That's the main theme of it. So I wonder, did they steal it from this particular cello sonata? It'd be kind of cool if they did. Let's just go from there. We're almost at the end, but I just want to hear that last phrase. Okay, so that sounds beautiful, and I loved your piano quality. It was stunning. Just make sure with all of the upbeats in this, so you do have to have the firm start, or otherwise it will sound just a tiny bit limp. Now you don't at all, but I know that you can have a slight bit more clarity in that. Okay, straight on there.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay, beautiful. So these are the things I think that would be very helpful for you. Always think about your upbeats. When you started first, when you played it, your upbeat was sprightly, so it's probably the 40 minutes of things I've been throwing at you. But just to keep an eye on what kind of quality you want to have in your chords and your upbeats. Maybe experiment a bit more with your bow, either placement or just sometimes I feel like you use a lot of bow when you could use half and just more depth, just to get a slightly more deep sound coming out of that. But it really sounds, I mean, what you're doing already sounds beautiful, and it's always a pleasure to hear you. All right.
Thanks so much, Ailbhe.
Thanks for playing today. All right. Bye-bye. Hopefully see you soon.
Well, Catherine, thank you so much. Wonderful playing again, and great to hear that particular piece of music. Ailbhe, thank you for all of your work with us this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure for us to host this masterclass with you, and thank you very much for doing such a terrific job with us this afternoon.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Not at all, and we very much hope to have you back, hopefully physically, in the National Concert Hall before too long. So we have a little time for some questions, and I think we'll ask our participants perhaps if they have anything that they would like to ask you that came up during the masterclass, or questions in general. I'm not sure if I see Rosheen at the moment, but Peadar, is there anything that you would like to ask of Ailbhe related to either the masterclass or any other aspect of her playing?
Yeah, actually, I just have. Well, I'd start with a sort of a more general question for her as a teacher and as advice for students, cello students. What, with a lot of us have had kind of a lot of our engagements and things cancelled, whether what she'd advise students to be working on at the moment when they don't have specific targets and I suppose to work towards, if there's anything that you have been telling your students to look at or other areas of music. I guess that's kind of the question. So
it's a great question. It's hard at the moment because things are so up in the air. So what I would suggest to people now, this is actually one of the rare times in your life that you will have the time to do the hard practice, because nothing else is actually happening. So if I were you, I would be literally going through my Carl Flesch scale book and just incredibly slowly taking out, you could even work your way through the proper etudes and using every single day to just focus on things like give yourself a target. And your target might be a month, and that month might be something like I'm never going to play a note out of tune ever again, and I did that one summer in first year in college over in America. I had a summer where I just was allowed practice, and suddenly my playing level went up a lot. So that in itself I would do, but I would also suggest looking around for things that are happening. So there are quite a number of online virtual masterclass courses that are now popping up. And I would just start making plans. Have a look at things like the Arts Council and funding and what you could possibly, the best thing you can do is study with everyone, and take as many masterclasses as you can because you're really getting the best bits of everyone. So use this time, which you'll never have again because you'll be busy off playing gigs and doing concerts, and you'll wish that you actually use the time to plan, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a million. Great. Answer.
And I apologize, I can now see Rosheen. So Rosheen, is there anything that you would like to ask Ailbhe at this stage?
Yeah, I guess this kind of ties into what Paddy was saying a little bit. Like in the last few months, I've been doing more intense practice than I would have had the opportunity to during, school, etc. And I'm just wondering, do you have kind of any strategy for when you get stuck in a rut? Just because you don't have the opportunity, you don't really let yourself get away with playing things through during lockdown. So it's harder to kind of focus on the small stuff and like.
Absolutely. No, it's a great question. So I find myself in the same scenario at the moment, actually, because suddenly I'm doing a recording project, and that kind of motivation is interesting in a period where you're not allowed to go outside. So what I tend to do is write a list of, I would say, probably about 15 things, and I physically give myself a target for each practice session. So let's say you do 45 minutes in a session, and you decide what's the one thing that you want to actually improve on. So it could be you take out shifts just for that day. So give yourself one of your 15 things. So you're always approaching with a target or a goal. And then also what I would do is get your friends, family members, and just make little concerts for yourself. So it might be that you play a piece to a friend. So I would try and organize that one of your friends comes into the house and socially distance themselves, and you play a piece, and it kind of gives you a few opportunities to perform, so you don't lose that skill of performing, and gives you a goal at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ailbhe. And Catherine, is there anything that you would like to address with Ailbhe?
Well, I suppose I was thinking kind of along the same lines as Rosheen and Peadar. For me, it's been kind of difficult sometimes to just motivate myself to practice every day and do a certain amount every day. What would you say about that?
Yeah, there's no doubt that this has been an unusual time for musicians, and I know a lot of musicians who haven't been able to practice or play at all because they just haven't been in the mental space to do it. I think sometimes the idea of the practice, is actually worse than when you get into it and you actually enjoy it. We've all had that where, you'd rather go to the cinema than sit down and do the work. I think routine is very good. So if you could actually make a plan that every single day at this time and this time, I'm going to do 2 practice sessions. So that becomes part of your everyday. And, you know, I'm a big believer in exercise, you know, going out and doing a bit of exercise, going for a walk. If you don't feel like it now, go for a walk, and then when you come back, you'll probably feel great, and then you might want to. So I have a big policy of distract, and then, you know, edge in the practice whenever I feel good about it. So, you know, it is tough. It's one of those unusual times. A global pandemic doesn't come around very often. So you'll do very well to just remember the fact that it's all for you. This is what the practice is for. So even if you're not 100% in that day, it's still not wasted practice. You could just do really targeted, small 15-minute sections, and do a study, do a 4-yard study for 15 minutes, and it's never a waste. Yeah.
Excellent advice, Ailbhe. Thank you. And I suppose it's a clear indication of how kind of crazy this time is, that we're doing this over Zoom rather than in the concert hall as we normally would. We have a question in from a member of the public, and I hope you understand this, Ailbhe, because it's a little bit beyond me. The question is, just wondering what intonation system would you focus on mainly? For example, Pythagorean tuning, just tuning, or equal temperament?
So it really depends on what type of music you're playing. Basically, talk about tough questions. People for Baroque music, for example, will use a very different tuning set. We talk mostly in cello about using harmonic or melodic tuning. And, you know, it depends on the era of music that you're playing, what you're going to use. So for me, what we tend to do is use the orchestral tuning of 4/4/2 hertz, and then depending on the repertoire, or sometimes I break my own rules. So there's never really a hard, steadfast plan. It's, you know, provided it is in tune with whatever instrument or temperament you're playing with.
Okay, well, thank you for such a clear answer on that question. Folks, we are out of time, and it just remains for me to thank Ailbhe McDonagh once again for presenting such a fantastic masterclass this afternoon. And thank you very much to our participants, Catherine, Peadar, and Rosheen. It was wonderful to hear you play. We look forward to seeing you all again, and please do keep an eye on the remaining masterclasses in this series. We have one a week for the next 3 weeks, so please have a look at nch.ie and keep an eye out for those. We'd be delighted to see you back for these. Ailbhe McDonagh, thank you very much for today, and we look forward to seeing you again as soon as possible.
Thanks, Nigel.